Hello and welcome to NDTV 24/7 to an exclusive interview with Nobel economist Professor Amartya Sen, who finds his home at Shantiniketan, the home of Rabindranath Tagore's Visva Bharati University. He finds his home at the center of a controversy. Professor Sen, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Boston. Thank you for your time. And let me begin by straight away asking you, at a time when India is agitated about farmers, about the economy, about the virus, what do you feel about the fact that your home, your ancestral home at Shantiniketan, at Visva Bharati, is suddenly in the eye of a storm with claims that apparently your property encroaches that of what is now the Central University of Visva Bharati?
Absolutely no idea. I would much rather, as an economist, try to talk about what the policy should be to deal with the economic crisis, which of course began before the COVID-19 crisis, but got much worse. So there's need for economic recoursing, certainly, but it's not my preference to talk about my house. And the whole thing, there's something quite mysterious. The house was taken, the land was taken on lease 80 years ago, and suddenly 80 years later, I'm told there was something wrong with the lease. They're not disputing there's a lease, but they're saying we have more land on which we are sitting than in the lease. Of course, along with the lease, my father also bought a number of plots which were put together. And it is possible that Visva Bharati is just making a mistake rather than being pernicious, as they seem to be doing. But we don't know, because even though Visva Bharati has been complaining that we're sitting on Visva Bharati's land, there has not been any letter from them. We have had no communication. Our last communication is a long time ago. And so we just don't know what makes them think that, what makes them decide it and make public announcement without one word with me. And so it's something totally mysterious.
Well, your home, Protichi, are you saying that you have not heard a word from Visva Bharati University about the dispute? No one has actually sent you a legal notice or a letter or anything of the kind in all these years?
Not about this dispute at all. But of course, 80 years ago, my father did talk with them when he took the lead. And when my father died, and then eventually when my mother died, I also had to talk with them to change the name of the leaseholder from being my father or mother to me. And we have had a conversation at that time, perfectly normal conversation. I wasn't told anything untoward that got into the lease. Then I was suddenly told, but you are actually a usurper of the land, and you are sitting on more land than in the lease. I wasn't told that myself. That's what they told the media. Right. Their communication is with the media, not with me. And even with the media, they haven't ever explained how do they know and why do they think we are using a bigger portion of the land than is in the lease. And they don't even seem to acknowledge that we have purchased some land around, that my father did in the 1940s, which are all registered, of course, in this full moja. And so we have documents on that, records on that. So on our side, there's no problem. But we don't know who to talk to because Vice Chancellor goes on breathing fire and announcing to the public that I've done something terrible. And the public often believes it. I see when I see the newspapers report that Professor Sen must be very aware that he's sitting on somebody else's land. No, I don't believe we are doing that. We don't believe that there was any communication on this subject from Visva Bharati. But if you say nasty things about Visva, and I'm told that given the fact that there is a background electoral preparation going on, and since I thought to be not sympathetic to BJP, which is probably in fact a correct statement, that I'm told that they have an interest in undermining me as an analyst, as a human being, as a person with some views, and a Bengali who doesn't like the encroachment of any communalist agenda in Bengal. We have fought against that. We had a lot of bloodshed in the 1940s. And I remember that as a child, both in Dhaka and in Kolkata. And I certainly don't want a return of communalism to Bengal. All that is true. And maybe there is a case for me to be undermined for those who would love to have some communalism in West Bengal. But these are just wild guesses. We don't know anything because no one is telling us anything. They're only telling the media and not even the full story as to why do they think that some more land is occupied by us.
Well, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, she is in Bolpur today. She has already spoken out in support of you. She has even written to you a letter extending full support to you, especially in view of the so-called political ramifications of this controversy. Are you feeling somewhat reassured by this?
Well, I don't know, reassured is the word. I'm certainly grateful to somebody who is showing sympathy, who at least doesn't assume that if Visva Bharati is saying something that may be correct. Visva Bharati is in the war path everywhere. There's a fight going on about some barrier between boundary wall, rather Trump-like, between Visva Bharati and some other institution. So Visva Bharati is quite an experienced warrior. But I'm amazed that so many people, when they read the story, tend to assume there must be something in it. There must be something, a little bit in it. I don't know that there is even one iota in it. Now, Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister, very kindly has not made that assumption. And he also thinks that I'm being harassed, which I think I am. And she expressed sympathy for me, and also was reassuring in the sense saying that we won't let them get away with untruth and actions based on untruth. All these I like, and I was touched by the letter, and I've written to her, thanking her for her kindness.
Welcome back to this exclusive interview with Professor Amartya Sen on the controversy over his house at Shantiniketan and much beyond. Professor Sen, I don't know how closely you are following the Bengal elections, but because it is round the corner virtually, everything that is happening now in the state and outside is being viewed through the prism of the 2021 assembly elections in Bengal. And we have the BJP making a huge push to gain control, oust Mamata Banerjee, and she, of course, is fighting right back. What do you feel are the ramifications of the BJP's bid to enter Bengal? What are your concerns about these elections
Well, I would like
upcoming?
some more clarity about what the fight is about. To the extent that BJP is an Indian political party and has the right to fight the election, I have no objection to their getting into the fight. The question arises about there are two questions really. One is the issue of communalism. And Bengal has paid a very heavy price. At some stage, I still remember being in Kolkata when, middle of the night, I could hear Muslims being killed, whether in Koyutola or wherever it is, and you could hear these screams, which still keep me up. I was also in Dhaka, and I saw both Muslims and Hindus being killed. Now, the communalism may begin in a small way, and it did. Even in 1937, Congress was winning elections, and there was very little communalism. The first Muslim League government in Bengal was in 1946, year before the independence and partition. And within four years, the Bhasha Andolon, their language movement, had started. So it's a very thin period of communalism, but it made blood flow, Hindu blood, Muslim blood, in all directions. So there are a lot of people who play around with communalism, haven't been as unfortunate as I have in seeing how much blood can come out, how much atrocities can be committed in what begins by looking just like a cultural thing about Hindu culture versus Muslim culture, but it ends up being a dramatically nasty, cruel affair. So that's very important. It's important also in the context that there are parties which are, of course, very committed to keep communalism out, and Trinamool is certainly one of them. But so is CPM, so is Congress, and to the extent that they tend to think that defeating a political party, in this case Trinamool, is more important than keeping communalism out, I think they make a mistake, because communalism is a snake that may look perfectly innocent, but once it bites, you are in a really bad position. So I think there is need for clarity. I mean, there is everything to be said for a healthy political fight between parties, between CPM and Trinamool and Congress and so on. But there is an overarching fact that the parties which do not want communalism have reason to support each other to that extent and not regard that the defeat of another non-communal party to be the best thing that they can achieve. So there is a need for clarity of thinking. I would look.
Well, that certainly holds a message for all political parties across the spectrum. But in the meantime, you've just spoken on communalism. And in that context, if I may ask for your thoughts on, the so-called love jihad laws that are coming into force in some states in the country, apparently cracking down on marriages between people of different religions. Your thoughts on that, Dr. Sen?
Well, I think there's a lot to worry about. The importance of human freedom is one of them. Human rights of people leading a life that they would like, no matter what religion it is, no matter who they marry. These are Indian and Islamic laws come under the purview and active attention of the Supreme Court. They will be ruled to be illegal. And until then, and that is unconstitutional, until then, people may get away with torturing other human beings by asking them to lead a life that they don't want. It's a big issue. One of the things in the pronouncement that Akbar made around 1600, when he was setting up a new constitutional rights of people, was that everyone has a right to convert to any religion they would choose and marry whoever, with irrespective of religion, what they all want to do. And that's something is a part of the long Indian tradition, going back 400-500 years. And we have some reason to be proud, because when Akbar was speaking about human rights in Rome, in Campo de' Fiori, people were being burnt at the stake on grounds of having converted to another religion. So what saddens me is that people should be proud of India and our achievement and our importance of human rights, both before the Constitution and very powerfully in the Constitution, often forget that. And that's really an insult to India. So I would say what we are calling the criminal act of love jihad. First of all, there is no jihad involved in marrying someone you love, though it happens to be he or she in a different religion, or to converting a religion, because we could decide which religion we would like to choose. It's not for a political party or some political bosses to define what religion we should have. That is for us to choose. The alternative is inquisition and burning of those who are thought to have fallen from grace. We don't believe that in India, and those who are trying to impose love jihad as a crime to be judged by the court, I hope the court will nullify that. But until that happens, what they're doing is to denigrate India in a way that my country, of which I'm very proud, doesn't deserve in the hands of people who are basically obtuse and ignorant of the importance of human rights and human freedom.
Well, I can't let you go, Professor Sen, without asking you about our farmer agitation here in India, where, they have been out in the cold of North India, near Delhi, for 1 whole month and more. Do you see a resolution anywhere around the corner? What could be a resolution?
Well, I think it should draw world attention, because it's dealing with extremely serious issues about the life of farmers. And even though Indian farmers have been quite successful in terms of their economic expansion, there are circumstances which are beyond their control, which have to be looked at. So this is not an issue that would be immediately resolved. What is really important is to have serious discussion on this, and that discussion should not be based on asking that the farmers who are aggrieved should accept some kind of minor compensation as enough ground for them to sit down and chat, because it has to be genuine concessions, and the concessions that have come so far have not been quite adequate enough. And I think it's in the interest even of the government itself, central government itself, to approach the issue with realism in mind and not pretend that concessions that are only nominal, that the farmers will be stupid enough to accept them as real. So they have to make concessions, and then they have to have real discussion. There are big issues involved. I think one of the biggest issues in India is child undernourishment, which has dramatically gone up according to all the information. And the information I have seen is totally astonishingly nasty. Now, all these depend on production of food, distribution of food, and the social arrangement and the economic arrangement. We need to rethink about all these issues. These are very important questions.
Well, that was a very insightful half an hour we've just spent with Dr. Sen. Thank you so much for your time and all the food for thought that you are leaving us with. Thank you so much, Dr. Amartya Sen, for joining NDTV.